Recording, all systems go. Hello.
Hi.
What a fabulous Wednesday. I am so glad to finally get you on here, Jordin. So, hello
Thank
and
you.
welcome to Let's Figure It Out, the live show where I interview my favorite people on what they do best, the health, mindset, and behaviors of women who just freaking want more for themselves and their family, and they're willing to ask the hard questions to figure it out. So this whole series is brought to you by my new free video course where I take you from feeling fine to freaking fab, and I'm sharing with you the critical strategies that I use to optimize the health of my patients and my family so that you can stop feeling fatigued, bloated, and hormonal in under 10 minutes a day. I am Dr. Keela Rosner, Naturopathic Doctor, hormone warrior, your wellness cheerleader, and I love busy, pissed off, stressed out women and helping them figure it the heck out. So today, I am so excited to introduce Dr. Jordin Wiggins. She's a fellow naturopathic doctor in the Niagara, Ontario region. But more interestingly, she's an entrepreneur, one of the best I know, and a sexual health disruptor. And what I just adore about how Jordin works, apart from being a crazy cat lady like me and having wild, unruly hair like me, is that she just completely is revolutionizing and changing the way that we deliver, educate, and talk about sexual health, what that means, and really integrating and building pleasure into our life. She's also the author of a fantastic new book that I cannot wait to get my hands on called The Pink Canary, where she optimizes the health of women, gets into like the hidden secrets and the things that we wish we knew as teenagers, as women in our 20s, and probably like when we're 70 and 80, lifelong journey, so that you can really adopt and welcome and build pleasure into your life, because I mean, that's the secret of it. We want to like things, right? How's that?
That is perfect. Do I even need to talk, or can you just take it from here?
I mean, like, you're so good at what you do, and I feel like we have a similar demographic of women that we work with. And if any of y'all are joining us live on Zoom, we've got a couple, and catching us on the Facebook replay. Oh my gosh, this is the time to ask questions, because between our brains and between our feedback with everybody, like, this is the time, like, disrupt the crap out of your Wednesday, and like, this is good.
There's nothing else I'd rather be doing than chatting with you about pleasure on a Wednesday afternoon.
I love it. All right. So, Jordin, I've got like such a list of things that I want to ask you about, and I have been fielding questions all week about people's concerns with their libido and what the heck is going on right now during this weird time. And like, you have my audience. Tell us about you. Tell us what you do, and then I'll hammer you with questions.
All right. So in a nutshell, people always want to know what makes me the pleasure doctor before they want to listen to anything else that I say. Two things happened in my life that were really pivotal moments that got me to this point. Number one was a struggle with depression in the second year of my pre-med degree. And this was a time that I just lost all connection and joy in my life in general. This now, as Dr. Keela would know, it was an underlying hormone imbalance, but there was also a missing piece to it, which is called anhedonia. And that's the medical term for inability to feel joy or lack of pleasure. So that's like, if you don't enjoy things that you used to, you don't look forward to making plans or doing things, even if things just don't excite you as much as they used to in the past, you're experiencing some form of anhedonia. And this is at least 1 in 4 women, and it's my prediction that it's even more than that. Those statistics are underreported, yes. Because women are going to their doctors and saying, I'm just not myself, something's off, but we don't really have the language to say, like, I lack joy. I'm snapping at my kids.
Raging
My
bitch.
husband, yes, because I'm working from home now, entertaining children, you know, plus everything else that we had going on. But we don't know how to communicate it. And oftentimes, if we are communicating these things, we're getting prescribed an antidepressant from our medical doctors. And really, I think we're missing the boat. We're missing the underlying hormone imbalances, like the lack of pleasure, lack of joy, and that's sort of the conversation that we need to be having. And the second thing, and this is some real personal details, but I talk about it in the Pink Canary, so I might as well share it with you here. I had a surgery on my vagina, which had to get stitched. So it was like a really bad episiotomy when I was 23. And then had pelvic pain and all of sort of those things to work through. So many women that have delivered babies know that sometimes things are not the same after childbirth. So those two things, my loss of joy, lack of pleasure, and my sort of structural issues with sex being painful and needing to find these answers for myself and then synthesize them in a way that we can, you know, talk about it with other women got me to be the pleasure doctor that I am today.
What a jump. What a transition. And you know, so much of what you're saying, I see reflected, you know, personally and with our clients, where I'm sure you have this too, but like one of the most common things that we have coming into our office with our female clients, or those that identify as female, of course, is that like, how's your libido? It's okay. I could take it or leave it. Or like, there's some real challenges. And for so many people, this is not something their doctor like ever brings it up. So you have to have some real lady balls to be like, there's this thing that I'm like kind of weird about and I'm so embarrassed, and like they don't bring it up because there's not really sure that there's anything that can be done about it apart from like major relationship upheaval. So they avoid the conversation, and it's like stabbing ourselves in the foot. Like we get to this weird place where we're just resigned, where, you know, this is how it is and I'm okay feeling fine.
That is exactly the experience of the women in my practice. And I mean, I just call it out. I call it out on my intake form. I want to know, you know, how is your libido? Are you enjoying the sex you're having? Can you orgasm? Is it painful? So I'm asking those questions up front. Mm-hmm. And then the women that I work with are like, yes, like someone to talk to about this, because they don't want to talk to their friends, or very few people can talk in that intimate detail with their friends. Their medical doctor maybe might give them a hormone cream or something depending on their age. But the issue that we're having is younger and younger women, men, everyone, they're experiencing a lack of libido and a lack of desire, and those numbers are on the rise. And really, there's a massive gap in healthcare for what do we do for these people and who do they talk to.
Mm-hmm. So, oh my gosh, there's just so much there that I want to just dive right into head first, like the Leo that I am. So, like I feel like one of the biggest challenges is one, having the language around that you mentioned. And I find with some of the women that I see, and probably you too, where it's like they don't know how to describe what's going on. Or when you like open that conversation, some are like, oh, thank God, like I'm able to do this, and like I get wet, and like and they really get into it, and they're just so grateful to have somebody to talk about, because there is so much, or can be so much ick feeling around, am I normal? Is this normal? Are we normal? Or are we like, there's something particularly wrong with me that doesn't happen to anybody else?
And that is speaking to a much bigger problem, especially for women. We are not even taught the correct name for our anatomy as children. So in a nutshell, vagina, and I hope all your listeners know this, but if you don't, listen up.
Figure it out.
Vagina is the muscular tube that's internal. That's the canal that the baby passes through. So in what we're actually looking at, our external anatomy is called a vulva. So for the most part, we're teaching women the incorrect name for their anatomy. We're teaching terms like, you know, oh my goodness, like floof, like there's just every once in a while I'll ask on my Instagram, what were you taught to call your private parts as a girl? And just the names that come up are absolutely ridiculous. And the most painful one for me is nothing. They were taught to call their anatomy nothing. And that inherently breeds, and you ask them, well, what was your brother's, or what did you call male anatomy? Penis. So just, I find especially for women that from the time we're little, how we're educated about sex is to lack the language or lack the correct language. And it really puts us at a disservice because, you know, when we're young, we have no responsibilities, no cares in the world, libido can be great. And then as we get, you know, older, more responsibilities, more drains on our time, hormone cascades change in long-term relationships. And then things aren't happening like they used to happen. And now we're really at a loss and our relationships are suffering.
Okay, so I'm going to get into it, but I think it'd be fun let's blow up Facebook experiment. And if you're joining us live here, why don't we comment with a heart if you're joining us, but like, what do you call what's going on? And it better not be nothing.
Yeah, tell us. And if it's nothing, like, that's okay, because I mean, you are not alone.
Fair enough. Okay, what are you calling the vulvar region, everybody? Because I mean, I think this is a really interesting social experiment. Go ahead.
Coin purse, that was one.
I mean, I think the worst that I've heard was axe wound, and I was like, oh God. And it's so interesting because, I mean, ideally we can all evolve and grow at every phase of our life. And I think in particular for women that are having their earliest sexual experiences where maybe they are in hopefully a really supportive relationship, that's where many of us can start to develop language and our early understanding of how things work. But that's not always the case with everybody. And then, we can start to take our experiences going forward in life based on what was happening in those formative years. And then often things tend to come to a head when things shift. So when there's a major hormonal shift, like maybe you've got married or moved in together with a partner, or you are newly on a dating scene, or you're newly pregnant, or the world implodes and we are at home social distancing with our people constantly. And it's a really great time to re-examine whether what we think we know is true, or is it a fact, or is it something that we can modify. And this is why I'm so glad that you're here, because we need people like you that just shake the shit out of things, out of what we think we know.
It's interesting because now I just wrote an article on Monday for the Washington Post. About 2 weeks ago, I wrote for Parents Magazine, and everyone, for the most part, like over 70% of people have experienced a decrease in libido.
How many? Say that again.
Over 70%, I think it was 73 or something, have experienced a decrease in libido. And then there's that small percentage that actually has had the increase, and the people that I'm working with are attributing it to more time at home, slower pace, sort of that stress response has been turned off. But I think for a lot of people, like even if they do have more time at home, financial stress, children are at home more, less help, like nannies, cleaners, that kind of stuff. So the stress response, turning off the stress response is very key to turning on your libido.
Okay. So, oh gosh. So why is this the pink canary? Where does that term come from?
So what I realized with myself personally and the thousands of women that I've worked with is that libido is like that morning light on your dashboard, like the canary in the coal mine, that if your libido is not good, it's a predictor of worse mental health. It's a predictor of failing relationships, hormonal imbalance. So libido for me is kind of this point, like this main point that's going to happen first. You're going to be, too tired to have sex, or would rather scroll Instagram. You look at sex as a chore. All of those things are going to start happening first, and then down the line, we're going to start seeing an overt hormone imbalance or, symptoms that are actually diagnosable as depressive disorder or an anxiety disorder. So I really notice in that libido is something that we should be screening for early if we want to prevent the other health outcomes from happening.
Amazing. So it's like a major, major warning sign. And I think there's so many conceptions about what libido is, specifically when it comes to women. So I would love you to talk about that. Like women's and men's libido, is it the same? Should it be the same? Are we basically tiny men? Like what's going on?
So we were educated with the male as default model.
What does that mean?
What that means. So just like we were taught to call a vulva a vagina, which is the hole where the penis goes in. Can I say penis? I guess I should ask you that.
I mean, I haven't dropped an F-bomb yet, but like it could happen. So yeah, sure, go for it.
So it's about how does the female relate to the male? And that doesn't work for same-sex couples. And that, you know what, it doesn't even really work for women. Like women will chase, anyone will chase sex that is good for them. So if you're wondering, most of the time, we need to work on a few things, like communication, understanding where the mismatched libidos are coming from, because this is very common. So people they'll ask me all the time, what's normal? And I can't really tell them what's normal, because normal is normal for two people, and that will change throughout the lifespan of a relationship. And also, is it really the number of times that you want to have sex or the quality of sex? And that's where I find if there's mismatched libidos, we really want to get to the bottom of, in that couple, what is going on there. Is it other needs that aren't being met? Is it an inability to communicate? And once we fix those things, once you're having these sexual encounters that are super satisfying for both partners, and I'm not even just talking about intercourse, I'm talking about like how you go about your days with each other, how you relate, how you communicate, like all of the things leading up to the bedroom, because we just think of sex as like, you kiss a little bit and then penis and vagina mutual orgasm, great. Like that's male as default model, how we're educated. But once the goal becomes satisfying sexual encounters, pleasurable sexual encounters, then if there was a higher desire and a lower desire partner, you've figured out a way that is fulfilling for both of you, so it doesn't matter anymore.
Okay. Oh gosh, you're just like, this is amazing. So when we talk about men's versus women's, like when you say the frequency is really not what's important, I feel like there's just so little about this, like what one might expect. And for so many of us, it's like when we're in the pursuit of a diagnosis, like we want to kind of know like a baseline of things, so that for some of us, it's going to put us in this camp of like, okay, good, we're fine. We're good. I'm fine. It's good. I can live with this for now. And then other people might be like, oh, like I'm having a lot less. And it brings on this whole like weird satisfaction because it's like, I knew something was off because I'm compared against a norm. And others are like, oh, now's the time to figure it out because like once a month or once a week might not be enough for some people.
Got it. So to give you a parameter, and I'll talk about stats, and they're great as a frame of reference, but we want people to do what's working for them ultimately. So a sexless marriage or relationship is defined as having sex 10 or less times a year. So that's like a little less than once a month. That's considered sexless. What research has shown to be like healthy for a long-term monogamous relationship, and then we can get into all the different relationship constructs and all that kind of thing, but just for generalization purposes, is once a week, 1 to 2 times a week in a long-term relationship seems to be, and that's even with the people that I work with, probably twice a week is a good, like a happy medium for both people.
Gotcha. Okay. I mean,
yeah.
So in terms of libido specifically, I feel like a lot of people have this urge. I mean, it's collectively called sex drive. And there's this concept of like I'm spontaneously ready and go time. And if we don't have that, is there something wrong with this? And I know for a lot of women, we're maybe wired a little bit differently. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, so this is one of the biggest myths that I love to bust because number one, sex is not a drive. Hunger is a drive, thirst is a drive, and I talk about this in the Pink Canary. Sex is something that the more you do it, the more you're going to want it. And people that are doing it less, it's just one of those things that it's almost like not even in our brain to think about doing it. So it's like, oh, it's like riding a bicycle. It's really not. It's the opposite of what we're taught socially, or in sex ed, which is dismal, I find, for the most part. And the thing is, again, that, spontaneous arousal, spontaneous desire that sort of you think about sex out of the blue, a very small minority of women, I think it's less than 30%, actually experience spontaneous desire. The other overwhelming majority need to be in a sexually explicit context, or we have to turn off the stress response. We have all the kids have to be in bed, or all of these things that would put the brakes on libido. We need to get rid of all those factors so that our desire can come. Like, it's more like a pot that boils. That's often like in the sexual sex ed stuff. Women are like a pot that boils, and men tend to be a little bit more like a light switch, like an on-off.
Yeah, stove.
So for women to constantly be thinking there's something wrong with me if I don't have spontaneous desire, it's actually that we're taught incorrectly, because you should not, for the overwhelming majority of women, you should not have spontaneous desire. So the power that we give women and the amount of relationships that we heal by teaching women this and teaching them how their desire response and arousal response works. And this is different for everyone. It's different if there's sexual trauma. It's different if there's struggles with communication in the relationship, or if there's young kids, if your kids are grown and gone. Like, this will fluctuate. But just by giving women that power, that knowledge to know, oh, like, I'm not wrong, but what I was taught was wrong, even just that increases their libido because they were taking the stress off.
That's huge. That's huge. I'm so glad that you clarified that. So just a quick aside, can men be of the pot boiling variety as well, or are they always gas stove?
Not, I like it. I like the gas stove. Men are the same. So, but more men in general experience spontaneous desire. But they could also be the pot that boils, which it's okay. It's what's normal for you. And I also, like, there's so many layers to this, like religion, how we communicated about sex in the home. So yeah, schedule, sexual trauma and abuse. Like, there's literally so many factors that it's hard to say this is how it should be for everyone. But majority of women do not have spontaneous desire, and majority of men do. But it's okay if they don't. But that's why are we taught that way? You know, to begin with, why are we taught this model?
Because we're not tiny men, but apparently research and society and so much TV and so much everything seems to make that the norm, I think.
Yes, male as default.
Male as default.
Over it.
We are long past that. So that begs the question. I mean, what can you do for those boiling pots? Like, so I want to get to that. I also want to get at something that I have seen come up so often in many of my personal friend relationships and family relationships and with our clients, and that is, I mean, what if the male partner is more of the pot boiler and, you know, the female is more of the gas stove? Again, very heteronormative.
Yeah, and that's okay, because technically the answer would apply to anything. So what I get both couples to do, or both people in a couple, doesn't matter, you know, male, female, like stereotypical or whatever the relationship construct is, sitting down, and it's one of the things on our intake form for the program that I do, like, what are situations that, it might be in module 1, anyway, what are the situations that you find explicitly arousing, and what are the situations that, like, really turn you off? And if you can think back to, like, your top 3 best sexual encounters and your top 3 worst, and we can kind of, like, dig through that and have conversations around there, we start to see patterns. And what we want to do is take from especially for the people that need to boil, we want to eliminate the things that turn you off, that put on the brakes, and we want to add more of the things that get your pot to boil, that turn you on. And that is an exercise that both people in any relationship should do, so that we know. So for example, I'm just going to use showering, because this is a big one for people.
It's a huge one.
Yes.
Especially if we don't need to show up at work every single day.
Yeah, we're all in quarantine, so it's even a bigger issue. So some people in a couple, if their partner has not showered, or if they themselves have not showered, that is a no. That turns the stove off.
Hard no.
For other people, it doesn't matter. So if one partner is actually approaching when their partner has not showered and doesn't feel like they're ready to have sex, usually, or, you know, to be intimate, usually the issue is the communication. It's not like, honey, come in the shower with me, I just want to rinse off, and then let's see where it goes. That's the language, like that communication, that self-awareness. We're teaching people to get that so that they can communicate it. Because what happens is the partner that's trying, they feel rejected, because usually, oh, not now, later. Like, that's kind of how it's communicated. So the partner with the higher desire or that tried feels rejected, and then the other partner feels like they let the other person down. So no one in that encounter feels good.
No one's feeling particularly sexy then.
No.
But someone's smelly.
Yeah. But if we can figure out Like, how do we approach this in a way that works for both people? What are the factors that turn you on? What are the factors that turn you off? And how to communicate them? Then that's where it's amazing.
So you bring up something really interesting here, and I've heard this come up several times, where people have this idea that things should be spontaneous. Does explicitly talking about this, like what works for you, what doesn't work for me, I like it when you do this, please don't pick your nose in front of me, and then it's like all this stuff. I mean, real talk, I've got a newborn. Does all of this stuff take away from the sexiness of it, or is this good? Like,
so this is another big one. So the myth of spontaneity, and again, wrote about this in the Pink Canary, is all in there for more details, because we need this information. We're not given it. We see in Hollywood movies and everything, like what that you just you did the put the kids to bed, two people sort of catch eyes, and then it's this amazing orgasmic experience that leaves them panting. But really, you have dinner on your shirt or spit up on your shirt, and you're sweaty after the end of the day. So we're not taught reality. We're taught a Hollywood version of what reality should be, but we're all trying to fit in that box. So we think sex should be spontaneous, and one of the exercises that I give the people that I work with is a scheduled intimacy date. And it's not even just about sex, because for some people, they are so far gone, like their relationships are like burnt out, crispy, that they really need some TLC, but it's just time to be together and connect. And sometimes it's with like penetrative sex off the table.
Mm-hmm.
But we could talk a whole half hour about how to do an intimacy date to like reignite your relationships. How do I summarize this in a way for people? I'm just trying to think.
Okay. Does talking about it kill it?
No, it makes it better. So once we get it out of our minds that it is supposed to be spontaneous, and this is one of the things that I'm just telling people all the time, just trust me, that by sitting down and like outlining things, like what do you want to do on your intimacy date? Maybe your intimacy date is you guys talking about the factors that turn you on and the factors that turn you off. Just by having these conversations, the pot starts boiling, even though it's not spontaneous at all, even though it's marked in your calendar. You have the babysitter because you've talked about the fact that if the kids are going to walk in at any moment, that's a turnoff for you. So you sort of stack things in your favor to have a really great, relaxing experience for both people.
I love it. So we need to talk about it, and you might be a boiling pot, or you might need to light that fire to get things boiling. That's a huge relief, honestly. I think for so many.
Yeah, and it should be for like 70 to 80% of women, and also the men out there, that it's okay if desire is not spontaneous for you. We're just taught wrong.
And it sounds like what we think is a minority, it might just be me, is the majority. And it can be such a gross feeling place to be in, to think that it's just me, or it's just my particular relationship, or it's just this. It's that mismatch of our expectation versus where we're at, versus just leaning into what is and what could be.
And what is that I genuinely find that both partners want to make the other partner happy, but they're trying to fit it into a model or a way we've been taught that's just not going to work. So both people feel disconnected.
That brings up, you've heard of the concept of the 5 love languages, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, this happens so often where it's like, well, like, you didn't kiss me, but like you took out the garbage and you put the kid to bed and you like made this other thing for me, but I might not be hearing that.
Exactly. And it's the same with sex and intimacy in a lot of ways, that you could be communicating your love in one way and the
loud and clear,
you're not picking up on it.
So we're lost in translation then. Can we talk a little bit about intimacy / closeness versus sexuality? So specifically, like when you're in a long-term relationship, when you're spending every moment of time together.
Especially now with working from home. There are some very, we need to understand a few things, and this is when I think the hormonal piece does come in and is true, as well as hormonal neurotransmitters. In a new relationship, we can always remember the new relationship and the fireworks and that, lust and longing and desiring that we had in the beginning. And then over time, what we trade that for is like oxytocin. And so instead of like dopamine and adrenaline and all these things that are at the beginning, we trade it for connection, security. So, but desire, like to think about something, if you want to think about what is the best dinner that you would want to have for dinner tonight? What restaurant would you want to go to if it was open? That's creating desire, and it wants us to move towards a goal where we're anticipating something, and we kind of stop doing that in long-term relationships, and we fall in these ruts. But it is so important to make time for each other to connect and to talk about desires for the future, so that we're sort of always like stoking that fire or like keeping that pot boiling to some extent.
Okay. So, and I feel like that's a challenge where people look back and say, like when we were 20 or like when I was a teenager and there's like this wistfulness. Is it always inevitable that things will grow tired and you'll be less interested sexually as the relationship progresses? Is that a given?
Definitely not. So one of my biggest areas of interest is how are there these women and these couples that have been together for 50 years and they are still having sex a couple times a week. These women are lubricating on their own, regardless of the fact that they're menopausal. Like, what are these people doing different? Because we need to learn that. And one of the biggest factors that I find plays a role is communication. We are not, I know, and I didn't even think it would be that. But after, once you work with 2,000-3,000 women with the same issue, you start to see these parallels. And we used to work with communication for 4 weeks, but now it's, or for 2 weeks, and now it's a 4-week process, because we have to be able to talk to each other, because that's the only consistent thing that we have over time in a relationship, because we don't know what life is going to throw at us. Is there going to be a pandemic? Is there going to be an unplanned pregnancy or financial stress, or who knows, like death of a loved one? So what we know for sure is that things are going to change, and what turns us on will evolve, and what felt good when we were 20 is not going to feel good when we're 40 or 60 or 70, 80. So to be able to communicate, that's the one thing, the one key that I find couples that did it well could talk to each other about anything. Not only in the bedroom, in the moment, which is something that I find people really struggle with. And we're actually like giving scripts to our clients that work with us, because it's such a taboo topic, or we don't think we can ask for certain things, or we don't know how. But to be able to communicate in the bedroom and out of the bedroom, because let's face it, if we're disconnected, like if you're upset that your partner didn't take out the garbage and all that, those little resentments build, eventually over time, you are very disconnected. And we need the communication to reconnect you again in and out of the bedroom.
So can I ask, you mentioned a couple of exercises like detailing the top 3 encounters and the worst 3, like what really works for you, what doesn't, even from a life perspective. How else can we get couples to start communicating if they've maybe never really explicitly talked about this?
Another journaling exercise that I like people to do, a simple one, is I like it when you, and we list things out of the bedroom. And this is like just specifically with like the Pink Canary and the worksheets in the book and the people that I work with. We're always doing it like during the day, or and some people want to have sex during the day. So, but non-sexual encounters and sexual encounters, because we really need both. So I like it when you do this, and then you just sort of free write. And I mean, like, I like it when you take out the garbage for me without me having to ask. I like it when you massage my feet and don't expect anything more. And then also we talk about the sexual thing. So I like it when you touch me here. I like it when you lick me there. And we get both partners to do it and sort of compare it.
I think that's fantastic. I mean, it's very easy to be like, well, like this is what worked, and then like you continue to do like the same ritual of this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and of course it's a challenge to stay connected when you're like, well, I know your next move. I liked it 3 years ago, but
yeah,
I like it.
And that's where, because if we can communicate and we can explore and we can move towards things together. So sometimes I'll get couples, and this depends. So this isn't one that I would just recommend everyone do, but taking penetrative sex off the table for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month can be a really great exercise in deepening communication and intimacy in other areas. Because if you are in that rut, like, oh, we kiss a little bit, whatever, penis and vagina done, and you're in that
Scroll Instagram again.
Yeah, if you're in that same loop, then sometimes we just literally need to take penetrative sex off the table for a little bit and just talking about other ways to please each other. And when you're in that exploration, you can really add to the list of I like it when you, because you've found so many more new things to do.
So that's like really similar to the work then we do with our clients, where it's like your body hates gluten and dairy, but you still need to eat and you still need to enjoy food. So figure it out.
Yeah, and what alternatives work for you? Maybe you hate the silk coconut yogurt, but you like the other brand. You don't know unless you try. So it's the same with sex.
Amazing. So you mentioned working with other practices, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to talk about building pleasure into your life outside of the bedroom.
Yeah, so this is something I see it mostly with women, where we feel like we need to get all of our work done first, like work hard, then play hard, take care of everything, work, husband, children, mom, dad, everyone else is first and then us. So there's something about like mother that means sacrifice, or, overachieving at work and putting yourself and your needs last. And this is like the opposite. Yeah, it is. It's the opposite of what turns women on and makes them feel alive. And then they're giving from an empty cup instead of giving from the excess and the overflow. And it just feels so different when you're full and you're happy. because then you don't have to go searching for the turn on. It's just there. Like you're always at a little low boil. And if you want to turn it up, you turn it up. And if you want to turn it down, you turn it down. But it's just there. So that self-sacrifice and that whole concept, we need to throw it out. It's outdated and it sucks. But we need to work on that with a lot of women to get over the guilt, number one. But start by layering in things that you enjoy in your day. Sometimes like the basic ones. So for women that just they don't have the time, they don't have the support or resources, and they just work, from the time they get up till the time they flop on the couch and eat a bag of chips because they're so unfulfilled. Do things like buy the fresh flowers and just sit them on your desk or kitchen counter where you're going to see them and enjoy them. I love getting my nails done. I miss my esthetician so bad. But like, what makes you feel good? Because I just like looking at a nice manicure. For me, right. Not for other people, for me. If I'm going to commute to work, am I going to listen to a podcast that just makes me feel like excited, or am I going to look at the news that is stressing me out about COVID? Mm-hmm. So finding ways, small ways, like little slivers of pleasure in your day. And if you put those practices in, over time, like attracts like, the more you like have sex, the more you want sex. It's the same with pleasure. The more that we weave those little bits in, the more your arousal, the more your pot will boil naturally. And just simple stuff. I know of one for me is a really, really clean wallet and purse. Because you don't realize how much, maybe it's not a problem for you, but if I have because right now, before we got on this call, I was like, oh, I gotta clean up this purse. It's disgusting me. But if I open my wallet and it's just clean and everything's nice in there, and same with my purse and things are just easy to grab, I love that. It makes me feel good. So little things, a clean underwear drawer. I know that's just when you open your drawers and stuff's clean there. It's just like, I don't know. It feels good. It feels delicious. Maybe a bath does for you, but it's doing those things that make you feel good and getting rid of those little irritants.
Okay. So a couple questions are coming in live on Facebook and on Zoom. I so love that. And I think that can so be a mindfulness practice of, like, for me, I'm a Marie Kondo, like, fold everything and file it, because it's so freaking satisfying to like have it all arranged. But for those of us that are like maybe pot bowlers, we're like, I can't focus when there's shit all over the kitchen counter and the sink is full and I've got emails and patients dinging or whatever. But so you need like a certain number of conditions to be met before you can relax enough to allow things, but also put your pleasure somewhere in the top 5. Like, how does that work?
So asking for help is a big one. So you've got the emails that you need answered. You know that there's a stack of dishes on the couch, or on the couch sometimes too. It was a crazy day and there's dishes on the couch, dishes on the counter, like living room's a mess, and you're trying to, answer your emails with one hand and load the dishwasher with the other, and up comes your husband. So what would be good is to kind of like lean into that one and say, honey, can you do these dishes, tidy up the living room? I'm going to answer these emails and I will meet you in the shower in 20. So, or get your kids to help. Make it a game, get them to do a cleaning blitz. Where I find women specifically fall short is we cannot ask for help, or we try and set the boundary. We try and ask, and then they're not doing it the way we like it, so we take it back and do it all
micromanage it.
Which is a whole other one that we have to work on to get there, and really just be in your like turn on and enjoy all day long. But you cannot do it all yourself. It's just not going to happen. A good exercise that I get women to do is, what are you doing daily, weekly that you absolutely hate? Is it dishes? Is it folding laundry? Like, I like folding laundry. I find it relaxing. But for other women, they would probably hate that. So get help with the things you don't like doing, and then don't fill that time that you would have spent on a Saturday afternoon doing laundry, dishes, all that stuff. Fill that with pleasure, but you've got to clear it out first.
Mm-hmm. And there can be a real challenge, I think, right now, but also with entrepreneurs in general and students, because there is always something that you can be doing, and it can be very hard to not feel guilty about like all these other things with that time, which would be better spent doing things that are good for us. Yes.
And this is the thing, like, do you go for the walk or do yoga or meditate? It's all of those things that we know, and research proves that like the more orgasms you have, the better your hormones are, the better your neurotransmitters are, the better your immune system functions. Like, there is literally a litany of research proven health benefits from orgasm that nobody talks about because it's a taboo topic.
And we can't patent it.
Yeah, you're right, because pharmaceutical companies can't make billions. It's not, yeah.
Well, there's something so physiologically cool about that too, because it makes sense if our biology and our environment is telling us like things are happening that are good for you. And like, if you're likely to be orgasming often, like you're probably having more or quality encounters. So your body's thinking like, oh, there's some reproductive viability there, even if you're like 63 or on birth control or whatever. So it makes sense for your body to have a vested interest in keeping you well and your biology functioning and your immune system strong and you mentally looking for good opportunities just in general in your life, because you're a vessel for the next generation.
Yeah, and you're just attracting things that are good for you. And try and say no to a turned on woman. Like, it just, you don't. We like to shame those women. We see them. And the women that just sort of like the tides seem to part and the doors seem to open, and people just do like what she asks, because she's asking from a place of like commanding and fulfillment and overflow, not from like demanding and like fear that it's going to be taken away from her. So it's just this like entire flip that we need. And when we're hormonally balanced and we sleep well, like all of those things as naturopathic doctors that we teach people. But I find sex like really is that, sex and libido is that pink canary. It's that morning light. It's that thing that we need to check first.
That goddess energy that we want to be bringing to the table at work and at home and in everything that we do. Jordin, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I've had one question come in about having conversations around pleasure and what works specifically if there's a history of sexual trauma and in a new partnership. I know that's a whole other conversation, but briefly, how might we broach that if we don't have that familiar oxytocin-fueled long-term relationship?
Yeah, so definitely if you feel like you cannot have open conversations with this new person and you don't feel like you're going to be supported, held, understood, or at least maybe they might not understand right away because they have no frame of reference of your experience. But if you're getting that vibe, that uneasy vibe of how do I say this? How do I approach this? I would be questioning if I wanted to share myself that intimately with someone, number one. Number two, saying things, and this was, I'm trying to remember because this was good. This was like about sharing like STI disclosure and stuff, and I wrote for Huffington Post about it, and I'm trying to remember exactly, but I'll give you the gist of it. Sort of framing the conversation of like, you know, hey, I've got something that's a little sensitive that I'd love to chat with you about. Just want you to listen first so I can, you know, get my feelings out, and then would love to chat. Are you up for it, kind of thing? Just so they know that you're sharing something vulnerable. And then expect them to maybe not understand right away, but also know that you get to choose what happens after that if you're not sort of happy with how they respond.
That's smart. I mean, timing is so everything with those conversations.
Yeah.
And what about if there's like ongoing pain? You alluded to this yourself, but if there is like chronic pain, or your physiology is just changing, or like, you know, maybe there's mental health concerns that come and go, how do we address that waxing, waning? Today might be great, but next week, like, things might be off, but how do we keep that pot boiling amongst that?
Yeah, so definitely if things are changeable throughout the month, with pain, it's probably hormonal. If things are, I'll have people that like before their period, sex is super, super painful and it's a low estrogen issue. In menopause, tissue tends to be a little bit more friable. So like using lubricants, possibly hormonal creams vaginally to help restore the elasticity of the tissue. A lot of times there's a few things going on. Underlying pelvic floor dysfunction, and this can happen to women of all ages. We used to think that it was more for women that had delivered children vaginally, but even if you've had a C-section, just carrying the baby could give you pelvic floor dysfunction. I had pelvic floor dysfunction from being an athlete and my surgery. So every once in a while I'd get this pain that was like, I had to stop everything and it would take the wind out of me. And it took me 4 years to find a pelvic floor physiotherapist.
I mean, it's so sensitive. You want the right person too.
Yeah, I didn't even know they existed because this was back like I was 18, 19 kind of thing. So with pelvic floor dysfunction, I always find we need the physical treatment, but there's also a mental, emotional component there as well. So being completely relaxed, having all the factors that turn you on, and the factors that turn you off to get you in the mood, and not having unrealistic expectations of your body and how it will perform is super important. So maybe at some times during the month, penetrative sex just isn't an option, but other things are, and being able to communicate that with your partner.
Great. So just being open and honest, as you're saying. One conversation that came up with a client of mine recently, and we had her do an experiment. I don't think a lot of women know this, but your cervix actually changes position within the vaginal canal depending on where you're at in your menstrual cycle. So what might feel great around ovulation when your cervix is sitting higher might just feel horridly weird later on when your estrogen levels have shifted, right?
Yeah, and that's all about the communication, that if a position that 2 weeks ago felt amazing is painful, you need to be able to feel comfortable enough to say like, hey, this is hurting, let's change it up and try this kind of thing. Don't just sort of, I have so many women that just try and get sex over with so they can like buy themselves a couple weeks before the next sexual encounter, and that just hurts my heart.
Could be so good. Oh, Jordin, this has been so fantastic, and you are so honest and so to the point with this. And I think that's what so many of us need, is just a refreshing dialogue about this, so that we're not all me and me alone. I know you've got some pretty great things in the works right now, and you have just newly launched a book into the world. Can you tell us a little bit about this and where people can find more about you?
So my book, The Pink Canary, is available on Amazon, Chapters, Barnes & Noble. I would absolutely love if you ordered it from Amazon and reviewed it when it was, once you read it. And if you want to find out more about me and the work I do, going to thepleasurecollective.com you'll find a lot more information. We have a blog that we update weekly, a newsletter that goes out weekly. So a lot of these tips and things that I'm talking about, like our exercises, the journal exercises, things that I wrote in the Pink Canary, new things that I learned along the way, those are all there, like free resources about these things on the Pleasure Collective.
Oh, amazing, and so needed with your straight ahead approach that you take to everything, as long as I've known you, Jordin. Is there, last call on Facebook and on Zoom, for any questions for Dr. Jordin or I about building a pleasure practice, why it's important, even some hormonal effects that might be changing your libido, anything along those lines, because we could talk about this stuff all day long. And this is just the perfect opportunity. So I have to share right now, my mother is listening. My mom is amazing. One of the most supportive for pretty much anything that I do, but particularly female-led entrepreneurs. And she has this comment on Facebook, which is totally what you're saying, where there is apparently a great song that nails it, but it's hard to kiss the lips at night that chewed your ass off all day long.
Ooh, yes. I like that. What's the song called?
I don't know. Mom, if you are watching, what is the name of the song? My family are musicians, so like so many just things that most people would say have been narrated through song lyrics. It's a talent we have to like ruin every song, to like challenge anything going on with like, here's the song. So we're waiting on that one, Mom. So you mentioned if there's something physiologically going on in terms of hormonal imbalances, things that you might actually want to take to an appropriate medical practitioner that gets it, that you feel comfortable with chatting about. Like, what are some of the issues that we would want to investigate or rule out as it pertains to your libido?
So definitely naturopathic doctors that focus in hormones, women's health should be a great place to start. We want to do hormone blood work to see if you are a candidate for some type of botanical hormone replacement therapy, that kind of thing. If we're looking for a hormone, this is my little caveat, because I would love for it to be simple. And when I graduated school, I thought it was going to be simple. And then I had to write a whole book about it because it was not simple. If sex is painful, and it is because of a hormone imbalance, that can often easily be fixed with botanical medicine or hormone replacement. But if you're looking for something to boil your pot, to ignite your desire, if you're looking for the little pink pill, it does not exist for women. They've tried so many times. Yeah, I have a whole chapter in the Pink Canary about this one. But there's deeper rooted issues there, and if there was a simple fix, I would by all means tell you, because I would love for us all to have these like intimately connected, passionate relationships. And the other really, really big thing, so see your naturopathic doctor for like hormone assessment. Also, pelvic floor physiotherapists are a amazing resource for people with pelvic pain. If it actually is like structural, muscular, we get so much shame around like being loose and, leaking urine and that kind of thing. And oftentimes it's actually not that we are too loose, but that our pelvic floor is too hypertonic. We're carrying our tension there. And we need to be able to learn how to relax it, to sort of connect with it. And a pelvic floor physio is amazing for that.
Can you just see any pelvic floor physio, or is there some differentiation that you want to be looking for when you're looking for a practitioner if you suspect sneeze, peeing, stress incontinence, prolapse, you're prepping for childbirth, you just recovered from childbirth? Any insight on that, Dr. Wiggins?
So most pelvic floor physios, like they're physiotherapists that had to do extra training to specialize in that area. So they are all great, but just like finding your fit of the naturopathic doctor, find your fit of a pelvic floor physiotherapist. So mine not only was amazing at the structural kinesthetic aspect of it, but she also totally understood the mind-body connection, which was really, really important for me. So do your research online, you're Googling of who's in your area for pelvic floor physios. And if you don't like the first one that you see, keep looking. They're out there. They will help you. Just like naturopaths, find your right fit.
Right. We can't just say, I tried it. It didn't work.
Correct. Yeah.
Amazing. So a good solid workup is fantastic. And we see this all the time with our patients where, oh, my doctor checked it. And I mean, that should be checked, and you can corroborate this with me. We want to be ruling out things like low iron. There was a liquid iron supplement ad going out a few years ago saying, basically you take this and it won't be, I have a headache tonight, I'm too tired, honey. So we want to look at our iron status. We want to be looking at things like our thyroid function, and the basic testing that is typically done, the TSH, alone is not enough, friends. We want to be looking at our general nutrient status, and of course a hormone workup that may be dependent on where you're at in your menstrual cycle as well. So you may not be able to get it done in one shot, but of course your well-being, your reproductive well-being, your enjoyment of your life is worth more than one trip to a lab to figure it out, right?
Completely. For your health today, but also the investment for your health moving forward.
Fantastic. Dr. Wiggins, you are such a joy to chat with, and I so appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot going on with this book launch that you are doing. I posted the link in our Zoom chat where to find Dr. Wiggins' book, The Pink Canary, The Hidden Secret to Optimum Health for Women, and I will go back and do that in our Facebook as well. I have been waiting to get my hands on it, and I will let you know what I think about that as well. Anything else that you would like to leave with our live watchers and our replay viewers, Dr. Wiggins?
Just get off this chat and go do something that makes you happy, brings you pleasure, because you probably are not doing enough of it.
I'm amazing. What's that going to be for you today?
Ooh, I got these new Epsom salts, so I am really looking forward to my bath and my book tonight.
So I'm a huge dork, and my husband and I are urban homesteaders, and you've met my husband. Yes. Sweet, sweet man. So Monday with a newborn, I decided to can 32 half pints of dandelion jelly, and it's delicious. Tastes like spring. So I'm going to make some really buttery toast and spread some jelly on that. Not eating your feelings. It's a pleasure practice.
Which that is the difference. Big, big difference.
Can you tell us slightly about that?
Okay. Yeah, this one is a massive, massive can of worms. So oftentimes in working with women with their hormonal health and all of those things and how it leads into pleasure, we do diets, we do cleanses, we do these restrictive things because we want this result. But really where I like it to come from is doing things because they feel good. So maybe you are a person that needs to avoid gluten. but you're doing it because it makes you feel good, not because you want to lose 15 pounds. And the amazing part about it all is that when you're doing things because they feel good and you stick with it, you get the end result eventually. But it's not, if it's coming from a place of like lack and like, oh, I can't have gluten, you're probably going to stick to it and then like cheat the odd time or go be so restricted that you don't feel fulfilled, and that's not right either. So approaching anything, it's like with our health, with our eating, with our sexuality, I think that the best way to do it is from a place that makes you feel good.
Amazing, friend. You are wonderful, and I could chat to you for hours, but I know you need to get going. And I hope that this has been a really great bright spot in everybody's Wednesday afternoon. I will link where people can follow you on the gram because I'm sure there'll be lots of questions, and Jordin is just massively entertaining. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody live. We are going to stop our recording from now, but we'll be keeping our eye out for questions going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.